Have you ever wondered what intriguing stories might unfold inside the most luxurious hotels when the city falls asleep? Maybe it's a random moment, a surprising encounter, or a shocking secret. Imagine walking into a hotel at midnight and accidentally witnessing something that could change everything. That's exactly what happened at Horizon Skylark. And it all started like this. That night, the revolving doors of Horizon Skylark Hotel swung silently open. A man stepped in, wearing a simple blazer over a slightly wrinkled t-shirt. Yet there was something about him, a presence that made it impossible to look away. It was Keanu Reeves. No entourage, no security detail, just a quiet man who seemed to want to remain unnoticed. Keanu had recently purchased this hotel in a discreet deal that few people knew about. But instead of hosting a grand press conference or basking in the spotlight, he chose to visit the property quietly. He wanted to observe everything in its most authentic state when no one knew who he was. No flashing cameras, no red carpets, just a quiet night and a chance to see how the hotel really operated. The hotel lobby was bathed in warm light from the sparkling crystal chandeliers. A soft classical tune played in the background, blending seamlessly with the serene ambiance of the late hour. But if you paid close attention, you'd sense something unusual. A subtle tension, as if the air itself was holding its breath, waiting for something big to happen. Keanu walked slowly through the lobby, his eyes taking in every detail, from the paintings on the walls to the reception desk, where a young staff member named Liam was meticulously arranging white lilies in a tall crystal vase. This wasn't just someone doing their job. Liam was putting his heart into every flower, treating each petal with care. The precision and focus made Keanu pause, watching a little longer. The smallest tasks often reveal the truest character of a person. Keanu thought to himself, recalling advice from an old friend. He picked a quiet corner of the lobby and settled into a soft leather chair. From there, he could observe everything unnoticed. But deep inside, he felt something strange. It was as if tonight wasn't going to be just another routine visit. What do you think happens next? Will Keanu discover what he's looking for, or is something even bigger waiting for him? If you're curious, drop a 1 in the comments and stick around, because this story is just getting started. Part 2, The Uninvited Guests. If you think a quiet night in a hotel is the perfect time to relax, think again. Sometimes it's during those calmest nights that the most unexpected things happen. And that's exactly what unfolded that night at Horizon Skylark. Just minutes after Keanu settled into a secluded corner to quietly observe, the elevator doors slid open. 2 guests stepped out, and instantly the atmosphere in the lobby shifted. Ethan and Sophia, dressed in designer attire, wore expressions of unmistakable irritation. You know the type, don't you? The kind of people who enter a room and immediately make you feel on edge as though the entire world exists just to cater to them. Sophia, in a shimmering cocktail dress, strode toward the reception desk with a pace faster than the glare in her eyes. "You there?" she said, her tone sharp with condescension. "We just checked in and ordered room service. Ridiculous. How can anyone call this 5-star service?" Ethan, standing beside her, nodded in agreement, adding a smug smirk. Honestly, this hotel used to be much better. It's a shame to see how far it's fallen. From his distant vantage point, Keanu observed the scene unfold. He'd encountered his fair share of entitled individuals in his life, but their demeanor still made him raise an eyebrow. It wasn't just their complaints that struck him. It was the way they looked at Liam, the young receptionist. Their gaze was filled with an air of superiority, as though silently declaring that Liam wasn't good enough to serve them. Yet Liam held his ground, maintaining his composure and a polite smile. "I'm very sorry to hear that you're dissatisfied. What can I do to make things right for you?" Sophia scanned Liam from head to toe, her expression as if appraising an object rather than speaking to a person. "We'd like to speak to the manager. Is there anyone else? Someone who actually understands high-level service?" Though his face betrayed a flicker of tension, Liam stayed professional. "I'm the senior staff member on duty tonight, ma'am, but I'll do everything I can to resolve any concerns you have." Ethan shook his head, letting out a disapproving sigh. "Honestly, the problem here is simple. Your staff just isn't up to par. We've never dealt with service like this before." At that moment, Keanu felt a wave of tension rise in his chest. He knew all too well the sting of being judged solely on appearances. He'd experienced it on subways and even in the glitzy world of Hollywood. But he also knew this wasn't the time to step in. Not yet. He needed to see how everything would unfold first. Finally, Sophia stepped back with a cutting remark. "We'll be back, and make sure there's someone more appropriate here to deal with us." With that, Ethan and Sophia marched off, but not to let the matter rest. No, they were just getting started. Keanu remained seated, his expression thoughtful. He watched as Liam quietly adjusted some paperwork on the desk, trying to maintain his calm. In Keanu's mind, a question echoed. Why do people like Liam, those who are simply trying to do the right thing, have to endure treatment like this? That night, the story wasn't over. The storm was just beginning to brew. And when it hit, it wouldn't just change one person. It could change an entire system. What do you think will happen next? Leave your predictions in the comments below. This is just the beginning. Part 3. The storm begins. Have you ever wondered what happens when someone's patience finally snaps? When their dignity is pushed to its limit? That night at Horizon Skylark, the storm we're talking about didn't come from outside. It erupted right in the heart of the hotel. About an hour after the initial confrontation, the elevator chimed again. Ethan and Sophia reappeared, but this time they weren't empty-handed. Sophia was wrapped in a hotel robe, while Ethan clutched his phone, its screen glowing brightly under the dim lobby lights. Their faces were flushed, not just from the wine, but from sheer anger. From across the room, Sophia pointed directly at Liam, her voice echoing through the lobby. "You, over here. Our room is freezing. The thermostat doesn't work, and we can't stand it. Get someone competent here right now." Liam glanced at the clock on the wall. It was well past 1 a.m., but he kept his tone calm and professional. "I'm very sorry for the inconvenience. I can send maintenance up to check the system, or we can move you to a different room if you'd prefer." Ethan stormed up to the desk, his voice low but sharp. "Don't speak to us like that. Do you even know who you're dealing with? We've already documented everything and posted it online. Thousands of people are watching how this so-called 5-star hotel handles things so poorly. So I guarantee you won't be keeping this job much longer." Keanu, who had been sitting quietly until now, couldn't stay silent any longer. He stood up, his long strides carrying him toward the front desk. The soft light from the chandeliers reflected off his calm but resolute expression, and all eyes in the lobby turned to him as he stepped into view. Sophia turned, her eyes widening as she recognized him. "Wait, Keanu Reeves?" Her voice shifted instantly from anger to shock. "What are you doing here?" Keanu gave a polite nod. His voice was deep, calm, and tinged with cold authority. "I'm here to see how my hotel operates, and tonight I think I've seen enough." Ethan froze, his bravado evaporating. "Your hotel?" Keanu's gaze didn't waver. "That's right. I recently purchased Horizon Skylark, and what I've witnessed tonight has left me wondering, how do guests like you think it's acceptable to treat someone the way you've treated him?" Sophia stammered, trying to come up with an excuse. "We didn't mean, it wasn't intentional, we just..." Keanu raised a hand, cutting her off. "You meant it. You didn't just disrespect a hardworking employee, you went so far as to publicly harm his reputation. I've seen your post." Ethan, now visibly nervous, tried to regain composure. "We were just frustrated. We didn't realize he'd been working here for so long. We didn't know." Keanu's tone hardened, his authority undeniable. "Do you know how long Liam has been here? 5 years. He's consistently been one of the most highly regarded staff members at this hotel. And how did you repay that dedication? By belittling him, simply because you didn't like the service. That is unacceptable." Sophia looked down, unable to meet his eyes. Ethan hesitated before pulling out his phone, his voice barely audible. "We'll delete the post." Keanu nodded. "Delete it. And in its place, I want to see an apology. Not just to Liam, but to every staff member you may have treated this way without realizing it." The tension in the lobby was thick, but it carried a sense of justice. Liam stood behind the desk, his eyes shining with a mix of surprise and gratitude. Ethan and Sophia mumbled their apologies and deleted the post right then and there. Without another word, they turned and quietly made their way back to the elevator. Keanu turned to Liam. resting a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Thank you for your patience, Liam, but I promise you, from now on, you won't have to stand alone in situations like this." Liam managed a small smile, though his exhaustion was evident. "Thank you, Mr. Reeves. I didn't expect this, but it means more than I can say." Keanu gave a firm nod, his expression determined. That night, he realized something vital. Real change doesn't start with flashy policies. It begins with standing up for the people who quietly do what's right, even when no one else notices. It's part 4, actions that sparked change. Sometimes, one small moment can transform an entire system. And that night at Horizon Skylark, it wasn't just a confrontation. It was the beginning of a revolution. The next morning, despite only getting a few hours of sleep, Keanu felt wide awake. He called an emergency meeting with the hotel's managers and staff in a large conference room. Sunlight streamed through the tall floor-to-ceiling windows, symbolizing the dawn of a new chapter. "I know that something unpleasant happened last night," Keanu began, his voice calm yet filled with resolve. "I'm not here just to be the owner of this hotel. I'm here to do what's right, not just for our guests, but for all of you, who work every day to uphold the standards of Horizon Skylark." The room fell silent as everyone listened intently. Some exchanged worried glances, while others seemed curious. Zoe, the housekeeping manager, was the first to speak up. "Mr. Reeves, I think you should know that what happened last night isn't unusual. We've lost many good employees because they felt unprotected from guests like that." Keanu nodded, his expression empathetic. "I want to hear more. Tell me, where have we gone wrong?" "Mark," the front desk manager chimed in. "Many times, we've been pressured to accommodate difficult guests just because they're VIPs or influential. Instead of standing up for our staff, we're expected to keep them happy, no matter how they behave." Keanu took a deep breath, feeling the frustration that had clearly built up over time. He knew that if things were to change, it would take more than just promises. "Here's what we're going to do," he said firmly. "We'll be implementing a new policy I'm calling the Fair Hospitality Accord. This policy will clearly define employees' rights, guests' responsibilities, and how we handle situations involving inappropriate behavior. Everyone, whether they're a guest or an employee, will be held accountable for their actions." A murmur spread across the room. Those who had grown used to the mantra of "the customer is always right" felt a refreshing shift in the air. Liam, who had been invited to the meeting, hesitantly spoke up. "Thank you, Mr. Reeves. But do you think this policy will really make a difference? We've submitted feedback before, but nothing ever changed." Keanu smiled, his gaze steady as he looked at Liam. "I don't just want to change policies. I want to change the culture. And that starts with everyone in this room. If we don't stand together for the values we believe in, then yes, nothing will change. But if we unite, I believe we can make this place a symbol of fairness." Keanu's steps to change. Keanu didn't stop at words. Over the following week, he and the management team rolled out concrete actions. 1. Announcing the new policy. A clear code of conduct was displayed prominently in the lobby and distributed to all employees. 2. Employee training. A series of workshops were conducted to equip staff with the skills to handle challenging situations with confidence. 3. Public feedback system. All complaints from guests and employees were logged and addressed transparently. 4. Employee protection. Any acts of disrespect or discrimination from guests were documented and acted upon immediately. In severe cases, guests could be denied service. External reactions. Word of the reforms at Horizon Skylark spread quickly. Employees from other hotels began sending emails, expressing admiration for Keanu's approach. Some former guests even reached out to apologize for their past behavior. Notably, Ethan and Sophia, realizing the extent of the story's reach, issued a public apology. They even donated to a fund supporting hotel staff as a gesture of redemption. Conclusion. Planting the seeds of change. One evening, Keanu stood in the hotel lobby, watching Liam arrange a new flower display. "What flowers are we working with today?" he asked, a hint of a smile on his face. "Orchids," Liam replied, his eyes bright. "They symbolize resilience and renewal. I think they match the new atmosphere here." Keanu nodded in satisfaction. Horizon Skylark was no longer just a hotel. It had become a symbol of fairness, compassion, and the belief that in a world of luxury, human dignity remains priceless. What do you think? Keanu turned toward the camera with a smile. Can we take these values beyond these walls? Share your thoughts below. And remember, sometimes it only takes one small action to create a big change.